Welcome to day 60, Numbers chapters 28 to 29, and Mark chapter 8. Here we get a bunch of offering instructions. There's been a lot about offerings. Offerings were a huge part of the religious traditions across the region at this time, and it was a way of people doing something physical to show their commitment to God, to continue their relationship to God, to set aside a little bit of time in their life to spend time with God. So we have some instructions about daily offerings and festival offerings. Now, some of us know about some of the holy days of the Jewish faith, such as Passover, Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah. Um, if you think about it in English, holy days is what became our word holidays. And so everything that we celebrate as a holiday usually started as some sort of religious tradition, either pre-Christian or from the Christian tradition. So that's just something, a bit of trivia there to remember. As I was reading this, my reflection was, what do we offer today? Are we focused only on ourselves and our personal desires and needs? Do we give offerings in order to catch God's attention, in order to ask for things that we think we need in our lives? Our offerings are gifts to God, things that we are giving willingly, things that we're giving because we want to for God's plan in the world. Our gifts, our offerings can also be gifts to our neighbors. Our offerings can be used just like the offerings that the Israelites gave were used to support the Levites, the priestly class. Our gifts to churches can be used to support our neighbors in the community through our ministries. The biggest thing that I think we can remember from the instructions about offerings is that life is not about us. So many of us are really wrapped up in our own personal lives, needs, desires, and we're always getting messages to make the most of ourselves, to be the best person we can be, to be the most beautiful, the most successful, the most rich, whatever. And offerings are one of the ways that we can continue to remember that we are not the center of the world, that we were put here by God as a gift to the people around us. And our choices in our life can bring grace and love to the people around us. And one of the ways we can do that is through our offerings, but also our offerings remind us that we're connected to others and that it isn't all about ourselves. Looking at Mark, we have another feeding. In this case, we have 7 loaves that expand to feed 4,000 people. Now, afterwards, the Pharisees want proof of who Jesus is. And Jesus just fed 4,000 people with 7 loaves. Jesus seems tired of the badgering. Jesus seems tired of people constantly wanting proof of this, that, and the other thing. So my reflection here is, are we like the Pharisees wanting proof and miracles? What does it take for us to believe? What does it take for us to make a commitment to the way of Jesus? Are we aware of God's creation and presence in our daily lives? Do we look at sunrises and laughter and smiles and snowflakes and love and peace as wonderful miracles that God has given us? Jesus then goes on to ask a question to his disciples, who do people say that I am? And the first answers are John the Baptist or Elijah, who are prophets, or one of the other prophets. Peter comes up with the right answer, Messiah, the Savior that God promised to send. Now, this makes me think of the miracle movie that Disney made a number of years ago about the U.S. hockey team beating the Soviet team at the Lake Placid Olympics in 1980. There's a place in there where the coach is trying to bring the team together. The team is all amateur people coming off of various college teams. And they go around the circle and the coach is like, what's your name? And who do you play for? And he keeps asking this over and over and over again. And it is clear that everyone's identity is wrapped up in which college they played for. And the colleges have rivalries. Plus, there's the rivalries between the players from Massachusetts and the players from Minnesota. And it keeps growing and growing, this division based on who they play for, until finally, after one game where they did terribly, the coach asked the question again, and the guy who becomes the team captain says, I play for the USA. And I think this is a huge thing. When we think about who is Jesus, and when we think about who are we as Jesus followers, Are we looking at the ways that we're divided, or are we looking at the ways that we come together? Peter was like the captain of the team. He got it, he shared it with others. Was he perfect? No. Did he go on to make other mistakes? Did he deny Jesus at other times? Yeah. He didn't have all the answers, but he showed us the way of being aware of what's going on and standing up for it, even when no one around him was. And I think that's a big lesson for us today. Now, Jesus talks of his death, and Peter immediately rejects all of this. So, he quickly doesn't get it after his moment of getting it. Then we have this tough section of letting Jesus lead in our lives and not avoiding suffering. Our whole life these days, everything in our culture is about being as comfortable as possible. I have to say, I have a new car and I've got heated seats and a heated steering wheel, and it is so wonderful during a Wisconsin winter. But how much of our lives is always about avoiding suffering and being as comfortable as possible? And building on that, how often do we avoid making sacrifices for our neighbors when they need help? Following Jesus is not the latest, greatest self help manual. This is self sacrifice, where we are giving of ourselves to be able to make God's kingdom grow here on earth now. So, one of the things that a number of Christians have done is they have started making intentional decisions similar to what the monks and nuns did back in the Middle Ages. How can I downsize my life? Can I get by with a smaller house, a smaller car, less clothes, so that I have more money and more time to be able to donate to building up God's kingdom here on earth today? So, I think the big question for us is, what is self sacrifice that Jesus is calling you to today? Have fun wrestling with that one. We'll see you next time.